So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to the man, Bob D. Thanks very much.
Now I know how the captain of a sinking ship feels as people are jumping overboard. I'm Bob and I am an alcoholic. And through the grace of a God that I was afraid to believe in, that I've accessed and maintained in my life through a process outlined in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, the ability to remain sponsorable, which is tough for a guy with an ego, and the persistence of our primary purpose of trying to forget myself and help others, and consequently I haven't had a drink or any mind or emotion altering medication since October 31st, 1978. And that remains the great miracle of my life that astounds me from time to time, because I couldn't even stay sober in jail. I would always find something. I'm curious, first of all, I want to thank God. Johnny has been amazing. He told me he'd give me €5 every time I mentioned his name. Johnny. And Mary has been wonderful, and the hospitality here has been spectacular, more than a guy like me deserves, truly. I often wonder why I end up doing this, and I don't know. Something, I guess God's given me an ability to have an experience and then talk about it in a way that seems at times to be useful. And it maybe isn't useful to everybody. But sometimes in Alcoholics Anonymous, our experiences match. And then that thing happens that's almost transformational. And we all experience that to some degree. When you're in your early meetings and people are sharing their story and you find yourself nodding your head, thinking, my God, I'm like that. And it gives you courage and hope to take actions you would have never taken. Like getting a sponsor, going to meetings, getting involved. And so maybe with God willing, there'll be a little hope. There'll be a little of that happens this weekend, maybe. I'm curious who's here. How many people, are there any Al-Anons here? I knew it. I could feel an Al-Anon in the room. I have a very dear friend in Al-Anon explained to me some mystery of why alcoholics end up with Al-Anon so often, because they finally find someone who thinks about them as much as they do. Yeah. How many people are in their first year of absolute abstinence? Wow. Oh, wow. Glad you're here. How about first 30 days? Anybody in the first 30 days? Oh, okay. Really glad you're here. Anybody that's kind of fed up with us and you're in your last 30 days and you know it? Anybody? No. I wouldn't admit it if that was true for me. You'd get gang 12-stepped here. It'd be bad. What I'm going to try to do is share my experience with the step process. But I have to say this up front. There's a lot of focus around the world today in the recovery legacy, but it is only one of three. And they're all very, very important. As a matter of fact, we're going to talk mostly about the steps, but I've come in the last 10 years or so to believe that the traditions as practiced as principles to live by are actually the higher set of spiritual principles. For self-reduction, ego deflation, unity, connectedness, which we all long for. They're actually the higher set of spiritual principles, but very difficult to put into practice. I want to talk a little bit, I'm going to talk quite a bit actually about step one. And one of the reasons that we spend a lot of time on this is it's very difficult for us I am step one resistant. When it says in the beginning of chapter 3 that most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics, that is really true. I don't want to be an alcoholic. I'll be anything other than an alcoholic. I'll be a drug addict because there were rock stars that were professed drug addicts. That's kind of sexy and cool. But I don't want to be an alcoholic. You know, I looked up to these rock stars that profess drug addicts. I never looked up to anybody that wet their pants on a regular basis. And I had alcoholics in my family who were obnoxious and pathetic on alternating days. I mean, and I don't want to be like them. I'll be a mental health case. Because if you're a mental health case, you get pills and sympathy. I like both of those. I'm good with that. But I don't want to be an alcoholic. And I got real sick arguing with who I was. And I've had alcoholism as far back as I can remember. Now, it's hard. You can't say for sure you're an alcoholic until you drink alcohol. But I had the predisposition of alcoholism emotionally and mentally. But there's a lot of people that have those feelings and thoughts that aren't alcoholic. And you don't know if you're alcoholic until you drink. And then you have that definitive experience. And in the doctor's opinion, Dr. Silkworth, on page XXVIII in the 4th edition, Silkworth starts to talk about what defines us and differentiates us and sets us apart as a distinct entity in society, in the world. And he starts off by saying, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. That the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. Well, he says 3 things there that are important to me. He's talking about a type of alcoholic, and he's talking about a chronic alcoholic. If you go to page 20, starting on the bottom of the page, it talks about 3 types of drinkers, but the last 2 would both easily be diagnosed by a clergy or a doctor or a psychiatrist as alcoholic. But there's very important differences in the 2. The first one says, we have a certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. So he's drinking habitually to the point of physical and mental impairment. Not good. Most doctors would diagnose that guy as alcoholic. And it goes on to say it may cause him to die a few years before his time. And then here's the difference between him and me. If a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, or change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative, this guy can stop or moderate, even though he may need detox. He may need some medical attention. And I guess most of us know people like that were horrible drinkers, and then they just come to their senses one day and realize this is bad. And they just quit. They might go to church, or they might start working out in the gym or something, but the end of their drinking solves their problem. They have what you could easily consider an acute case of alcoholism. Now, acute illnesses are very different from chronic illnesses. Pneumonia is acute, and pneumonia can kill you. But if you go to a hospital and they load you up with the right antibiotics, they can knock that pneumonia out once and for all. You don't need you don't need pneumonia meetings or pneumonia sponsor or pneumonia steps. You're done. The physical stabilization of the condition is the end. But chronic illnesses such as diabetes, chronic heart disease, and chronic alcoholism, the physical stabilization of the condition is but a beginning in a lifetime of treatment. And that is the type of alcoholic I am, and I didn't know it. And it almost destroyed me. because it didn't make any sense to me how I could get so weird sober that I drink again when I've sworn to myself I'll never drink again. So Silkworth says, back to Silkworth, he says at the bottom of the page, wait, I'm going to go back to a couple things. You know, he's talking about alcohol, the action of alcohol on chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. I couldn't see that. Because I know a little bit about an allergy. I have a mild allergy to cats. If I'm around cats after about an hour, my eyes start to water, my nose starts to fill up. I get that. But none of that, nothing seems to happen to me when I drink alcohol. I don't see any allergic reaction. And he says that the allergic reaction is manifested with this phenomenon of craving. And it's a phenomenon because it doesn't happen to most people. Only a few people who have this thing called chronic alcoholism. And I remember sitting in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and listening to people talk about this craving, this phenomenon of craving. I don't have that. I mean, I'm in trouble. I go to jail sometimes. I do stupid things. I black out. But everybody I drink with drinks like that. I mean, I don't see anything abnormal. When Silkworth later says that to us our alcoholic life seems the only normal one, I normalize the abnormal mentally. I will make nonsense seem sensible to me. And so I don't think I don't craving. I don't drink and then claw the walls to get more alcohol, or I don't do that. But the odd thing about a craving is that you can't see it until you can't satisfy it. Everyone in this room at this moment is in the grip of a craving you're not aware of because you're satisfying it, and that's the craving to breathe air. But if someone behind you would slip a plastic bag over your head and pull it tight, you'd realize you got this craving to breathe air because you're stopped from satisfying it. So one of the difficulties for me was that I avoided situations intuitively, not because I think I'm alcoholic, I just intuitively, where I could only get 2 or 3 drinks and then that's all I could get. I mean, and to me it wasn't like I'm alcoholic or I'll go crazy if I don't have more than those 3 I can get. It's just, I look at the situation and just go, what's the point? Right? It just seems stupid to me. I passed on drinking on several occasions where there's like a 6-pack of beer and 3 guys, right? And there's no way to get any more. I mean, no, thank you. Now, if we had 3 cases of beer, I'm your guy, right? I'm there, man. And I don't think it's alcoholism. It just seemed like, why do that? And I couldn't see the craving, and I was sitting in a meeting in the mid-'70s, and I listened to a woman share her experience of being in a dinner party, and a light went on inside of me, and I remembered something that I hadn't thought about, and I had kind of just swept under the rug. But when I was 18 years old, I was dating a girl, and she invited me over to her family's house for dinner to meet her family. And at that time in my life, you could have put me on a lie detector and said, Bob, is there any way in the world that you could be an alcoholic? And I would have said, absolutely not. And I bet you it would have said I was telling the truth. I was going through my better living through chemistry phase of alcoholism. But alcoholism doesn't care if you do drugs. It doesn't care it doesn't even care if you believe you have it. If you got it, you got it. And I had it even though I didn't believe I had it. And I'm in one of those periods where I've kind of cleaned my act up. I'm not doing anything. And I go to her house to have dinner with her family. And I sit down at the dinner table and they bring out a bottle of wine. Now, this is not the kind of wine I would have bought. This is a little wimpy Al-Anon kind of bottle of wine. This is, you know what I mean? It's like 11% alcohol. I like stuff that's like 20%. I like wine that when you read the label, you realize it's never even been within a mile of a grape. You know, it's right? It's like, It's like neutral grain spirits and great flavoring, you know, that's, but the 20% alcohol gets you downtown now, and I like that. This is wimpy, I think it's Blue Nun or something, you know. And they pour me a glass, and I drink fast. I think evaporation's a childhood issue or something, I don't know. I drink quick, and because I drink quick, I'm finishing my second glass out of the bottle, and they're still sipping on their first glass, and the bottle's dead. And I'm sitting there, and I got 2 glasses of wine in me. I don't know nothing about alcoholism or phenomenon of craving or nothing. I'm sitting there, and I'm just getting weird. And the conversation at the dinner table that earlier had been kind of okay was starting to become stupid and tedious. But I don't say anything because I'm a nice guy. But I sit there and I'm just like squirming around, and you know, I finally blurted out. I said, "My God, that's good wine. Do you have any more?" And they said no, and they went back to talking about movies and sports and other crap. And I'm sitting, and I finally blurted out. I said, "Well, I like beer." And they said, "Well, we don't have any beer, Bob." And they went back to talking, and I think I'm going to lose my mind here. I'm like, it's spinning in here. I'm like crazy. I excused myself from the table. I went to their bathroom. I locked the door, and I started rummaging through their cabinets. And I found a bottle of cough medicine that was 35% alcohol with codeine and terpene hydrate, which is kind of a bonus. And I remember, like a desperate guy, cracking that bottle, sitting on the edge of that bathtub and chugging that bottle of cough medicine, and all that crazy agitated thinking just went. And I was able to sit there and come up with a story, and I went back out to the dinner table, and I explained to them how I'd forgotten about something, and I had to go take care of it, and I was very sorry to have to leave, and they were very sorry I had to leave, and I went and got in my car and drove down their street about below, like the speed limiter below, like you're supposed to, turned the corner, got out of sight, and I drove. I was lucky I wasn't killed. I drove like a maniac to get to my friend Brett's house, because Brett had a bar in his basement, because I had 2 glasses of wine. And it was the one little window in my life where I could see something I normally couldn't see, because I always satisfied it. What happens to me when you just give me a little bit and then pull back? There's a test in the book, in the chapter more about alcoholism, and it says if you don't think you're an alcoholic, if you think these people in AA are full of crap, maybe you think, I know I'm in trouble, but my problem's really, I don't think it's alcohol. I think it's probably cocaine, or it's probably depression, or it's probably, I can't figure out if I'm drinking up my gambling money or gambling up my drinking money. I got all these other problems, and I'm not so sure it's alcoholism, and I don't see the craving. And the book says, well, you can quickly diagnose yourself. Go over to the nearest pub, try some controlled drinking. Try to drink and stop abruptly. Well, if you're like me and you try that and you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic, you'll go into that bar to have 2 strong drinks and then shut her down, which means you can't smoke anything, can't do nothing else. Just 2 drinks, that's it, go home. When you get to the end of the first drink, it'll become very, very clear to you that this is not the day for the test. This is not a good day for this test. And for various reasons. Some member of the opposite sex that's hot walked in, or a game's on that you want to see, or something. Because my mind will change its mind for me. And I don't know that. I don't know, because it doesn't look like a craving to me. It looks like I'm changing my mind. And I had no idea that alcoholism, this allergic reaction to alcohol that's created this thing called alcoholism, It uses my own mind against me. There's a great line in the book. It says that, therefore, the alcoholic's main problem lies in his mind rather than in his body. There's nothing on earth that can change my physical reaction to alcohol. I have that phenomenon of craving. I will always have it. And long-term abstinence doesn't change that. We 12-stepped a guy that had been sober 45 years. Bill Wilson was his sponsor, and he picked up a drink after 45 years, and the phenomenon of craving wiped him out. And he's dead. He started spinning in and out of detoxes for about 6 months, a little more, and eventually drank himself to death. Because the disease progresses. You know, he thought he would pick up where he left off. No. And it was so frightening to him and so frightening to us to watch how this thing just decimated him. And he had no clue what was happening. He's going to some AA meetings because that worked before, but alcoholism has upped the fee, and he doesn't know it. It's progressive, and over any considerable period, our book says we get worse, never better. Well, so I have this phenomenon of craving. It took me several years of trying to control and enjoy my drinking and failing before I really started to understand that I'm one of those guys you talk about. I can't take the first drink because it kicks that thing, it starts that thing. For me to take a drink of alcohol is like having sex with a gorilla. I'm not done till the gorilla's done, you know what I'm saying? And me and the gorilla start out having a dance. By the end of the night, I wish I was dead. So I get that. And I'm a funny kind of guy. I think I've always fancied that there's power in knowledge. And so when I start to really understand that I must not take the first drink no matter what, and none of the other substances that can kick that stuff in action, I can't take nothing. I thought I was out of the woods. I thought that now that I really truly know that, coupled with I've made up my mind and really mean it this time, a desire not to drink, I thought in the knowledge and in the desire I would have the power. And what I didn't understand is that is not enough. And in actuality, instead of being out of the woods, I was entering into the most horrific, most painful, most demoralizing years of my life that accumulated in 1978 with my I was in such hopeless condition and such emotional anguish, I was trying to take my own life. That I would have never imagined it could progress like that, but it did. Because knowledge, as it says in our book, isn't enough. Self-knowledge availed us nothing. And I started entering into the years where I would hit these horrible, horrible bottoms, and I'd swear to myself, sometimes sobbing uncontrollably, how I'm never going to drink again. And I would always drink again. And I couldn't stop it. And the reason is that, as Silkworth talks about a part of the reason, and there's more later on in the book, on the bottom of page XXVIII, Silkworth starts, this is one of my favorite paragraphs in the doctor's opinion. He says that men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. I think that's true of everybody. My daughter drinks because she likes the effect produced by alcohol, but she only likes a little tiny bit of it. Getting drunk to her is an abomination. Why would you do that? You'd be out of control. Why would you do that? She called me up about 2 years ago, and she was very sort of a little bit upset, I guess, on the phone, and she said, "Dad, I almost got a driving under the influence ticket last night." I said, "Really, Kate? Well, I didn't think you drank that much." She said, "Well, I don't, Dad, but I was in Stoney's, which is a bar, And I've been in there for 6 hours partying with my friends. They go in there and they do the line dancing, right? And I was in the bar for 6 hours, and I came out and got in the car, and a policeman pulled me over and gave me a field sobriety test. She said, "Dad, I was scared. She had just gotten promoted to run this bank. She said I could have lost everything. I was terrified." I said, "For God's sakes, Kate, what happened?" She said, "Well, I blew just a little bit less than a .05. Now, that's 2/3 below the minimum level for as .05 is like one drink every hour and a half, maybe. You were in a bar for, let me get this straight. You were in a bar for 6 hours, and you blew a little bit less than .05. She said, "Yeah, Dad." I said, "Don't tell my friends in AA, Dad." Jesus. I gotta have 3 times that blood level of alcohol just to feel comfortable going into a bar, you know, to get my social genes, you know, meshing, you know. Jeez. But she drinks because she likes the effect, but I think with me it's more than that. I like it, but I think I need it. I yearn for it. Carl Jung wrote a letter to Bill Wilson. I have a copy of it in my book somewhere. He said that after working with Roland Hazard and countless other alcoholics, he came to believe that the alcoholic's thirst for alcohol isn't really a thirst for alcohol. Looks like it, but it's not. He said he thought it was a low-level thirst of the alcoholic's very being for unity, wholeness, or if you're more religiously minded, a union with God. And that has, over the test of time, that has been proven experientially to be true. Because as we start to connect with God through service and altruism and self-reduction and developing some kind of humility and getting smaller, as we do that and we connect with God, the thing that drove us seems to diminish in direct proportion to how connected I am and how much of service I do. But Jung said that this, he called it an unrecognized thirst, and it really is unrecognized. He said because it's an unrecognized thirst, it leads us down the road to perdition, which means it takes us to hell, but we don't know we don't get it. We don't get what's going on. We don't get what's going on. I have never in my life been on my way after being sober 3 months into a liquor store or a bar or a drug dealer's house or doing something that involves gratification, and on my way in there with this urgency to get that relief, stopped myself and said, oh, wait a minute, Bob. This is a low-level yearning for God. I never thought that once in my life. Never once. Matter of fact, I can't imagine ever thinking that. It never would occur to me. And yet, I think that's true through cause and effect in my experience. Silkworth goes on to say the sensation of the effect, the sensation is so elusive that while we admit it is injurious, we cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To us, our alcoholic life seems the only normal one, and God, that sure was me. I can't tell you how many times I'd be swearing to myself, I got to stop this. I can't live like this. I can't go on like this. And yet, in spite of the pain and suffering that I'm experiencing and inflicting on anyone who cared about me, in spite of that, something weird would happen to me. Now, there comes a time when I can't remember the reasons I swore I'd never drink again. I can't remember them. You know what I remember instead? I remember the fun I had when I was 18 years old when it still worked. I remembered the feeling of freedom and connectedness with people that I felt in a bar when I was 20 years old and I was playing in a band and I was just loving life and had my people. I forget that the last 2 years of my drinking were lonely and depressing, that there was no more party. And if you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic, you will remember what you should forget and you will forget what you should remember. That's why you can't, alcoholism is a hole you can't think your way out of. And God knows we try. I don't know about you guys, but I'm one of those kind of guys, you get me in a lot of trouble. What do I want to do? I want to go think for a little bit. I just got to figure this out. I'm going to figure this out. Can't do it. And so forth goes on to say, to them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. And that is crazy how I normalize the abnormal. And then he starts, for the first time in the book, he starts to touch on what happens to me when I'm sober that eventually drives me insane. So insane that I will go back and pick up the thing I swore to myself tearfully and sincerely that I would never touch again. And here's what happens to guys like me, and it happened to me every single time. It says, it's when we're sober, we are restless, irritable, and discontented, unless I can again experience that sense of ease and comfort, which came at once by taking a few drinks, drinks which I now see others taking with impunity. And after we succumb to the desire again, as so many of us do, and this phenomenon of craving develops, I'll pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This time I really mean it. And this cycle is repeated over and over and over. And it is. Until something happens. The book refers to it as a psychic change. Sometimes it's referred to as a spiritual experience. Sometimes it's referred to as getting a sponsor. Sometimes it's referred to as just surrendering yourself. As it says in chapter 5, those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. You know, completely is a lot. And I was that guy for 6 years. I relapsed. 6 years. 6 years of hell. 6 years of... I can't even put into words. Sometimes I wished I was dead so desperately. Just to get out of the pain, the anguish, the remorse, the shame, the hopelessness. So, what happens? Okay. Maybe this is your second time or third time in AA. Maybe it's your second or third treatment center. Because, you know, if you're like me, you're a bit of a skeptic. Just because they say you shouldn't drink doesn't mean what do they know? They're stupid anyway. You know, they're trying to take your fun away, which the funny thing about that is it hasn't been fun in a couple of years. And I'm sober, and I have hope. I have hope that I'm going to beat this thing. I'm going to turn my life around. Now, you know, if I don't drink, I'm a smart guy. If I don't drink, I could go back to college. If I don't drink, maybe I'll find her and get married. If I don't drink, I'm gonna get a degree. I'm gonna become a doctor. I'm gonna get a house. I'm like an engine that won't turn over. I'm gonna. You know, I'm gonna get drunk's what I'm gonna do, right? And I have no idea that I can't stop that. I have no idea that that's an eventuality. If you have alcoholism, it's not a matter, and you don't work the steps and you don't throw yourself into AA, it's not a matter of if you're going to drink again. I think it's a matter of when. Or even worse, like many, many members, you won't do everything everybody else does here, so you kill yourself instead with 10 or 20 or 30 years sobriety. Because you can't take the loneliness and depression anymore. and you've tried the mental health field, and they've done things for you that wore off, and it doesn't work anymore, and you don't know where to go. So many of us take our own lives because it doesn't look like AA is the solution. If you're sober, newly sober, or sober a long time, and you're suffering from depression and anxiety and horrible feelings of separateness, where you're all alone and the loneliness is eating your lunch, the steps don't look like they'll work. The funny thing about the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is that they don't look like they'll work to anybody until after you do them. And then we all say the same thing. Oh, I should have done that years ago. Jesus. I'm the last to know. And so I get physically sober, and these emotions start to creep up on me, and they're vague emotions. I get this vague restlessness. You know, you can't really put your finger on it, but it's like, I don't know. I get it. I don't want to be. I don't want to be here. I want to be somewhere else. Well, where, Bob? I don't know. Just not here. I want to work somewhere else. Well, where? I don't know, but I don't want to work here. I want to be with someone else. Well, who? I don't know, but I'm not her. Right? It's just that I can't get settled anywhere. The rest of the world is settled, and then there's me. The second symptom Silkworth talks about is irritability. I can't see that. You could have said to me, Bob, you're irritable. I am not irritable. Because irritable people irritate me. I am not irritable. What I am, and it's a blessing and a curse, what I really am is I'm just very intelligent, and I can see how stupid people are easily. It's a gift. Everywhere I look, I see stupid people. See stupid people in traffic. Oh my God, there's stupid drivers out there. I see stupid people in the grocery store. Have you ever been in the line, watch what people buy? A gallon of ice cream and a diet soda. There's some stupid people in the world. Stupid people in politics. Stupid people on TV. My family's stupid. Everybody's stupid. I work with stupid people. Then I have to go to these AA meetings where they have all the stupid people grouped. Oh my God. Alcoholics Anonymous was offensive to me. It was like all this happy, clappy crap, and everybody's grateful for everything. I remember, maybe some of you have had this experience where you just see these people in AA, they're just happy and grateful, and I just look at them and think, I'd have to lose 30 IQ points to be like that. You know what I mean? They're happy because they're stupid. They just don't see, if they can see the problems in life like I can. And that old saying, that was my motto, ignorance is bliss. But I'm cursed with intelligence. You know what? I'm not cursed with intelligence. I'm cursed with ego and no self-esteem. I'm the egomaniac with the inferiority complex. And I didn't know that I had this ego problem. The truth was, I hated myself. Of course I did. I would have hated anyone who did to my life and loved ones what I did to them. Of course I did. And I grew this giant ego to compensate. And what my ego does best is it judges. It tears you down, hoping that it'll level the playing field, hoping that I won't be so pathetic. If I can find enough stuff wrong with you, maybe I won't feel secretly so pathetic and inadequate about me. So I'm a judgmental guy. I'm an opinionated guy. You can measure egocentricity by the amount of opinions. And isn't that it's so fun. You go out and drink, and I'll tell you, if you got alcoholism will burn your life to the ground. You'll come back into an AA meeting, the first thing you'll get back is your opinion. And it is the source of my separation. It is the source of my conflict. It's what depresses and angsts me. And I don't know it. I don't know it's ego. I don't know. I don't think it is. I don't think, when people try to imply, therapists and people in AA tried to imply that I was selfish and self-centered and I had an ego problem, and I just knew you were stupid. You don't understand. I'm not selfish. I'd share my bottle of wine with you. There's no end to my goodness. But when it really came down to it, I was absolutely obsessed, concerned, and focused on me and my feelings and my security and my relationships and what you thought of me. And I judged you to grandize me. It's pathetic. And that's the nature of the guy that was here, that came here in 1978. And still is that, every once in a while, that kind of stuff rears its head. Matter of fact, it's a great measure of my spiritual condition to look around me and see how you look. If I look around me and I see a lot of stupid, selfish, self-centered people, you can bet I am in trouble. But I don't know it. But if I look around me and what I see is I see a lot of people that in many, many ways are just like me. That I see people that are struggling with some of the same stuff I struggle with. And I feel like almost a warmness towards them, because they're kind of me, you know? And I feel that. You can bet that my spiritual house is pretty good. It's pretty good. You are a reflection of my insides. Always. Always. So restless, irritable, and discontented. And that is so baffling to me. This chronic malcontent that I have experienced most of my life, drunk and sober. It's actually worse sober. At least drinking. Alcohol can anesthetize a lot of the restless, irritable. And this stuff happens to me really when I'm sober. And I'm one of those kind of guys that I quit drinking and I got something's missing. I got some kind of big hole in the center of me. And I don't understand it. But it drives me. It drives me into acquisition mode. And I'm always targeting things that give me hope. Hope that this will make a difference. Hope that I'll be better with this. I'll be better with her. I'll be better with that. I'll be better working there. I'll be better. And what happens is I acquire whatever that is. In an excited mode. And then I just start to watch it pale and the shine come off of it. And I live a life of a futile life when I'm sober. A life of desperate acquisition to realize that ain't it. Throw that away. That's it. Yeah. That ain't it. Because you cannot fix an inside problem with outside things. And yet, I believe that for a lot of my life I could. The right house, the right wife, the right girlfriend, the right car, the right job, the right band, the right friends, the right whatever. But you can't get enough right when you're wrong. And that's where the real problem was in me. And so I'm restless, I'm irritable, and I'm chronically discontent. And I don't know why. My grand sponsor was a guy named Chuck Chamberlain. And Chamberlain said this a couple times when I'd hear him. God, it really got to me too. He said, if you're alcoholic and you haven't had a surrender experience, you're going to run out of things to put between you and you. And there you are. And there you are. And my God, that is a horrible thing. That's usually when I would drink again. I'd be 6 months sober, and I've tried everything I can to make me feel better, and none of it really works. Because I've run out of things to put between me and me. And then I don't know what else to do, so I drink again. And it's alcoholism, but it doesn't look like alcoholism. It looked like a mental illness to me. And I went to, my mother was a therapist. I actually worked in the field as a therapist for a little while. I studied with Ellis and a bunch of guys. And I thought that I could find a solution in psychiatry and medicine. But I never did. Matter of fact, the more I studied myself in therapy, the more confused I was about who I was. I was lost. Isn't that weird? I'm working with some of the greatest psychiatric minds on the planet. And the more I work with them, the more crazy I am, the more bizarre and confused I am. And I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I sit there and I listen to like plumbers and carpenters and salesmen and hookers and all kind of, just talk about themselves, and I find me in a way I couldn't find me with those psychiatrists. Isn't that bizarre? And that's crazy. But that's exactly what happened to me. As you sit in the meetings and you start nodding your head. You go, oh my God, that's me. And those revelations are so moving, because it's like all of a sudden it's like a veil lifts. I'm listening to you talk about you, and in listening to you talk about you, a veil in me lifts, and I can see something in me. And it's not like it just occurred. It's something that's been going on for decades. But until that moment, I couldn't see it. You introduced me to me. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that I would find, and this really is accentuated a lot by steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. But the me that you introduced me to and I found here, I actually like. That's a surprise. I thought if I really was introduced to me, I'd have to kill the guy I found. You know what I mean? Because I hated myself. But everything I hated myself for wasn't me. It was everything I wasn't, driven by this ego. So, restless, irritable, discontent, we succumb to the desire again, as so many of us do, and we go back through the cycle again, and it never ends. It never ends. And that's alcoholism. A couple things on, let's go to page 24. It says the fact, in italics, the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. If you'd indulge me, if you raise your hand, if you've ever had the experience of swearing to yourself you'd never drink again, meaning it, and then drinking again after that anyway. Anybody? Besides, oh. What's wrong with you people? So what it says in the book, we just proved it to be true experientially. We've lost the power of choice. I can choose not to drink, I just don't have the power to carry it out. And Wilson goes on to say, our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. And I love this part. He says, we are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We were without defense against the first drink. I have a mind that can't see what it needs to see. I have a mind that yearns for the effects produced by alcohol so badly that I won't see the truth. And the truth is that the last couple years of my drinking, it was not a party anymore. I drank in depression. I drank sometimes in going crying jags because I hated myself and what I'd become. I drink in horrible, horrible loneliness. My drinking is pathetic. I don't bathe anymore because I'm busy. Busy feeling sorry for myself. It's not a party. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's worse than sober, and sober is pretty bad. And it's horrible. And yet, here's the crazy part. You get me restless, irritable, and discontent in a state of anxious apartness in that separation, month after month in a state of abstinence, and I will start fantasizing that I can jumpstart a party that's been dead for a couple years. I'll start imagining that I can go back and be that guy, the life of the party. And then you don't know the truth until you start drinking and you can't stop, and it's become pathetic again. And I drink once again in depression and loneliness and horrible, horrible stuff. The end of my drinking, last couple years, I didn't like to drink around people. I didn't want to go to clubs or bars or parties because they were full of people that alcohol was still working for the way it used to work for me, and I hated that. And I would my last couple years, my whole drinking in the last few years was I just hole up somewhere with a half gallon of vodka and seek oblivion. I was an oblivion drinker. It was just about blotting Bob out, and then come to start drinking again. I've been drunk 3 times in one day. Can't pass out, come to, drink again, pass out, come to, drink again. I remember many times looking out the window, and I don't know, it's twilight, but I don't know if it's the sun's coming up or it's going down. I don't even know what time it is. You look at the clock and it says 6:30. Is it 6:30 at night or is it 6:30 in the morning? I don't know. And I don't care. Where's the bottle? And just I get a blot Bob out. Because by this time, every time I'm conscious and sober, I'm in the presence of the guy I detest the most, me. And so I can't bring the memory of that into my head when I'm sober 6 months and I'm yearning to feel different. Alcoholism will it's a crazy thing how it works. I saw a movie in about 1980, I think. It was just some insignificant movie about the Cold War and spies and things. And there was this spy who kind of like a James Bond character, I suppose, and sort of very tough, macho spy who'd been captured by the communists, and this is back at the peak of the Cold War, and he was being tortured because evidently he had some secrets about some weaponry and aircraft, and these guys are just hell-bent to get those secrets out of him. They don't care what they have to do, and they've been torturing him for about a week. They've had him strapped to this chair. They've cut off a couple of his fingertips. They pulled some of his fingernails out. They even brought in, they hit him with a fire hose until he thought he was drowning. They brought in a generator with these wires that sparked. They put those wires on his private parts and turned the electric on. He was withering in agony, and he still wouldn't tell him anything. Now that's impressive, because I'm the guy you just show those wires to, and I'm giving it up, man. What do you want? I'll wash your car. What do you want, man? Anything, right? But this is a tough guy. He's a macho, torture-resistant spy. And they finally, this little Chinese doctor comes in, and he bows. He says, "My name's Dr. Chang. You will tell me everything." And this guy spits at him. "I'm not telling you nothing." And he says, "Oh, you tell me everything." He said, "What are you going to do to me, Doc?" He says, "I give you Chinese water torture." He said, "Water torture? You already hit me with a fire hose, for God's sakes." He says, "Oh, no fire hose. 1 drop." 1 drop, Doc, come on. You hit me with a bucket of water, I ain't telling you nothing. He says, no bucket, 1 drop. And they put this thing above his head and it just starts. Restless, irritable, discontent. And after 3 or 4 days, he's sobbing uncontrollably, begging them to let him tell them everything they want to know if they'll just make it stop. And alcoholism is kind of like that for me, because these little squirmy, insignificant emotions, seemingly, this little restless, everybody's restless, who cares? Discontent, tough up, man up, Bob. Irritable. Well, of course you're irritable, they're stupid. You know, I can't understand how these little vague, insignificant feelings that I can't quite put my finger on could break down this, what I believe is the greatest resolve I've ever had in my life to not drink. And yet, day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, untreated alcoholism works on guys like me. And if I'm not in the middle of the solution, then I'm stuck in the middle of the problem. And I get to choose one or the other. I heard a guy say this, it's a little gross, but it's true, I think. He was talking about how you boil a frog. He said it's hard to boil a frog. Their hind legs are so strong. If you throw it in a pot of boiling water, it gets scalded, but it gets out. He said what you have to do is you have to set it in a pot of room temperature, lukewarm water, and it'll just kind of settle in there. And if you turn the heat up slowly enough, it doesn't realize what's happening to it. And it'll boil itself, it'll boil alive to death. And I think that's what happens to guys like me with alcoholism. Because if I knew what was happening to me, if you knew what was happening to you, and you knew that you're on a road that a week from now you're going to wish you were dead. A week from now you're going to lose everything you love. A week from now you're going to burn your life to the ground. If you knew that, you'd do something about it. Of course you would. The problem is the frog doesn't know. The problem is we don't know. And I've been going to meetings and detoxes a minimum of twice a week for almost 40 years. And I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of men and women who drank again with various lengths of sobriety. A lot of them sober over 10 years that drank again. And that nobody knows. A week before they drink again, they don't know. They think they're fine. They don't see a problem. But they don't recognize untreated alcoholism because it goes below the radar and just gnaws at you. And Alcoholics Anonymous is designed to treat that. There's no way to treat the phenomenon of craving. It's medically, science has tried, they've tried to come up with pills for that stuff. All it does is kill about 1,000 people, and then they realize, well, that one didn't work, you know. But what Alcoholics Anonymous does is it treats the sober end of the equation. And there's 2 ends. And I desperately, I knew if I could fix either end of the equation, I'd be okay. If I could fix the drinking end, like finding the right mix of alcohol and drugs and medications. If I could fix that end so I could get high without getting weird and jumpstart the party and get it like it used to be, I'd be good. And I would have been good. This sounds bizarre, but it's true. I know this is true. When I got sober, if somehow a genie popped out of a bottle and said, listen, Bob, I can get you, I'll make it so you can get high like you did when you were 18 years old. But You can do that for 6 months out of the year. The other 6 months you have to be in jail. What do you think? I'd say sign me up. Sign me up. But once it stops, it stops. And alcoholism demands treatment. You know, you don't have a choice. You're going to treat it one way or another. You're going to treat it with alcohol and medication, or you're going to treat it with Alcoholics Anonymous. But it demands treatment. It is like an itch that I have to scratch eventually. You can put it off as long as you can, as long as you can stand it. But eventually I'm going to scratch that itch one way or the other.